Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is really to address the feeling of confusion that you might experience in a result of being in a relationship with someone who is highly manipulative or highly selfish, highly self-centered, and really sort of pathologically so. Meaning, particularly when we talk about someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic, there is evidence of lack of empathy. Lack of empathy, which means that they don't really have an ability to connect, share, or relate to another's feelings, needs, opinions, perspective, or even just sort of open discussion. This lack of empathy then contributes to others feeling what they might describe as feeling invisible, not related, and then they then sort of feel that then this is a quality of themselves when it's really just an object, or the context is in that of being manipulative or toxic, which means it is disagreeable or causing discomfort to others in order to pave a way for others to get ahead. So, a lack of empathy and then that confusion, I would say, meaning that it's very difficult to understand that those people with empathy then generally have a feeling of care or concern for others. And then this is not reciprocated. This is not given back. The individual who has narcissism or psychopathy, they don't really have that empathy that is required for you to feel heard, for you to feel seen, for you to feel communicated and related. So you might feel that you are unrelatable, or that there's something inherently wrong about you. And I think that is oftentimes the cause that creates the effect of not feeling understood, or maybe then you've derived or felt that you're a poor communicator, you're unlovable, or you don't know how to love, you're not good looking enough, you're not strong enough, tall enough, you're too short, you're too tall. There's usually some sort of permanent, and then which becomes then exhausting. The adrenal fatigue, I would say, that oftentimes is exhibited in those people who are targeted, because it creates a very specific type of stress or pressure, which is based on feeling sort of rejected, unloved. And this behavior is then unwarranted, which means there's nothing really that you can put a finger on that you said, that you can then have a discussion with and correct. So it's a way for them to sort of hold a permanent, they try to hold a dark cloud over you. And this creates an external locus of control, or a feeling that you must dissociate or really detach from yourself, your needs, your feelings, your opinions, your voice, what you're experiencing, your relationship needs. You have to sacrifice this, or brush them aside, or maybe dissociate, which means not connect to yourself and disown these. So meaning that you don't understand, you sort of skip over almost a developmental stage if you're in relationships with those people who are lacking empathy. And people then become very highly tolerant to this manipulation because of an intermittent reinforcement, which means there's something intimidating, fearful, they're trying to throw you under the bus, yet there's usually some other sort of reward that you've gotten from them. A hug, a kiss, a positive statement, a gift, whatever it is. There's usually some sort of reward that you feel in the presence of this person. But then there are other intimidating experiences that then sort of annihilate or devalue the good. But there's this intermittent reinforcement, and it causes a lot of confusion and pressure in other people, ultimately, which cause a lot of emotional woundedness while they're trying to figure it out. In other words, they're suffering certain looks, certain statements, certain ways of being treated that are unfair, unsupportive, and invalidating. Specifically that for oftentimes there is a negative intent, an adverse agenda, if you will, that is trying to, seeking others in order to sort of deprive them of their needs, so that they feel a sense of power and control, and really sort of an unhealthy reward, I would say. When we talk about a psychopath, they're particularly rewarded when other people are hurting, when other people can't make it, when other people suffer a loss or they're not doing very well. They feel elevated or rewarded by this. It's a very difficult cycle that you will find yourself in if you're in a relationship with a psychopath, because there's, kind of a here again, gone again, Jekyll and Hyde, and then it develops a sort of people-pleasing mechanism in those people who are targeted, because they can't figure out why they have, what they have done to deserve such callous or cruel or heartless treatment. In other words, there's a disconnect. And so the person just sort of tries to get back to where the relationship was, the love bombing. But, for a narcissist or a psychopath, relationships can only go so far before, you start feeling that there is something awry or off. And, this confusion is then, settling in. The brainwashing is a cause. The brainwashing and gaslighting, which is really, creating a severance of you and your sense of a practical reality that is fueled with boundaries and standards, and which involve, respect of you, acknowledgement and validation of you, i.e. the authentic, the real. Instead, this has to basically be repressed, which causes, I would say, a lot of the confusion and disarray, because you're not used to connecting within. You're not used to having the autonomy. There's a trauma bond that oftentimes is in its place, not one of love, warmth, and support, and patience and kindness. It is more of impulse, impulse, and sort of other relationship decisions that are there for their needs, and these sort of shutting out or ignoring of others. So this is pathological sense of self-importance. They aren't able to acknowledge and validate when they have sort of crossed over another's boundaries or standards. To the psychopath, these don't really exist. They're not they're rendered irrelevant, unimportant. Hence the con man, the con woman, those people who are opportunistic, which means they're taking advantage of others' vulnerabilities to get themselves ahead. And you don't realize that oftentimes people are then sort of drafted in, if you will, to help them to get and fulfill their agenda. And then those people who have empathy, generally then are then rewarded because they feel needed. There's some sort of payoff or some sort of reward. But as the relationship continues, you realize that you're losing control. You're losing perspective. You're losing your sense of empowerment. You're feeling that you don't know what's going on. There is something going on and you're not clued into. This is known as triangulation, where they're using others or events to sort of keep you in the dark and then spread character assassination or rumors about you. So they sort of create a situation or a tension or a pressure that creates confusion, because maybe then there are other people involved then who then become swept up with what is known in literature as flying monkeys, or those individuals who seek to support and surround a narcissist or a psychopath, those people who are there to elevate them and sort of enable and prop them up. And will those people eventually become confused? Who knows? But the fear, obligation, and guilt will create that confusion and basically put you last on the pecking order, which means you end up feeling guilty for some sort of happiness. This is another problem which I would say creates the confusion, is there's a feeling of guilt for happiness, a feeling of guilt for owning your truth, an element of guilt from owning even anything that is good or healthy that you have earned. So people then develop sort of a dissociation, or what is known in psychology as feeling like an imposter effect, sort of feeling that they don't really own where they're at in life. especially if there's compliments. They don't feel that it soaks in. They have just sort of a knee-jerk reaction where they're just sort of in a dissociative state and disowning their positive qualities. They haven't had enough repetition and experience, and then validation to someone, have someone, I see that is wrong. So there is oftentimes, they will ostracize and single other people out. I mean, you can study this in the literature. So that's how they take advantage, oftentimes, is sort of setting others aside, throwing others under the bus, isolating them and getting them ostracized, thrown out of families, thrown out of companies, feeling that you are being targeted. This is just, and you can be targeted by a number of people. So this is why I think a lot of the confusion arises, and it's why it's so difficult when you say, when other people see from within the relationship and, they ask, why would you continue, or why would you want to stay with this person? Why would you want to work with this person? Why would you want this person as a client or a fiance or what have you? So oftentimes other people, can see it from the outside looking in and would see that and not take or accept this type of treatment, and then they would identify it and deal with it very right away. This is very difficult oftentimes to see and deal with right away because of the intermittent reinforcement. It creates a very strong bond which is resistive to change, which unfortunately has a lot of negative consequences for you, but you'll usually find the psychopath will do things despite the consequences, despite it being fearful or being nonsensical. They will not really worry about the consequences where other people will. So in other words, I won't do that because A, B, and C. And so the consequences don't work. Whereas a female psychopath or a male psychopath, they will do things regardless. They have that entitlement. And it becomes very confusing for people because they will try to simultaneously embrace and hurt. But namely, I would say, is the brainwashing and gaslighting that causes the confusion for people to disown their reality, their truth, what they know to be true, and then they end up becoming sort of pushovers. Do not be a pushover. Do not fall for any sort of intensity or force that's seeking to push you over. That's emotional bullies, emotional vampires. Don't become confused by this. Be centered and be focused and own your truth, even if you know it within your heart, because there's a bigger picture going on, with this. But you have to give yourself an opportunity to accept and validate yourself, and and find that strength and courage within, even if it means sort of detaching from an abusive or manipulative or confusing source. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Have a beautiful day.